My dream growing up was always the same, getting my own place. Not a big house, not some luxury condo, just a small apartment where the door locked and everything inside belonged to me. That dream mostly came from how I grew up. My dad drank a lot. Weekends were the worst. By Friday night, the house would already smell like cheap beer and cigarette smoke. He'd stumble around yelling at the TV, sometimes yelling at me or my mom just because we were there. My mom wasn't much better. She mostly kept to herself and pretended none of it was happening. The house always felt tense, like something could explode at any moment. By the time I finished high school, all I could think about was leaving. When I finally got accepted to a small community college 2 towns away, I scraped together money from a grocery store job and rented the cheapest apartment I could find. It wasn't much, a tiny one-bedroom unit in an old brick building that probably hadn't been renovated since the late 90s. The carpet was thin, the kitchen lights flickered, and the hallway always smelled like someone had microwaved fish. But to me, it felt like freedom. No yelling, no slammed doors, no drunken arguments echoing through the walls at night. Just quiet. I remember the first night I moved in, sitting on the floor with a frozen pizza and a six-pack thinking, this is mine. And as I settled into college life, another thing naturally became part of the picture. Girls. In high school, that was always awkward. Bringing someone home wasn't really an option when your dad might wander into the kitchen shirtless and drunk at midnight. But now, I finally had my own place. One night, about 3 months after moving in, I invited a girl over named Sammy. We'd met in a psychology class and had been flirting for a couple weeks. Sammy was funny, sarcastic, and the kind of person who could make even boring lectures entertaining. That night, she showed up with a bottle of cheap vodka and a six-pack of hard seltzers. We ordered pizza, turned on some random horror movie, and just hung out on my couch talking. It was one of those nights where nothing dramatic happens, just laughing, drinking, and slowly getting more comfortable around each other. Eventually, the movie turned into background noise while we kept talking. By the time midnight rolled around, we were both pretty drunk. The empty pizza box sat on the coffee table, and the TV was playing some late-night infomercial neither of us had put on. Sammy stretched, looked at me, and said, "I'm definitely not driving home." I laughed and told her she could crash in my bed. I grabbed a blanket and pillow to sleep on the couch, but she insisted I stay in the bed too. "Relax," she said, half laughing. "We're adults." So we went to my bedroom, collapsed into the bed, and within minutes, both of us were completely out. Sometime later in the night, I woke up briefly. I didn't know what time it was. My head still buzzed from the alcohol, and the room felt slightly tilted, the way it does when you're half asleep and half drunk. The bedroom door creaked open, and I saw Sammy standing there, quietly slipping on her shoes. She looked over and noticed I was awake. "Sorry," she whispered with an awkward smile. "I hate the morning after thing. I'm just gonna head out." I mumbled something like, "Okay," and watched her leave. The front door opened and closed softly a moment later. I rolled over and passed right back out. About an hour later, I woke up again, this time because of a loud noise somewhere in the apartment. It sounded like something hitting the wall in the hallway outside my bedroom. At first, I thought maybe Sammy had come back because she forgot something. My brain felt foggy and slow. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand and squinted at the dark bedroom. The door was still open from when she left, and the hallway light was off. Everything looked normal, except for something at the edge of the doorway. At first, my brain didn't process what I was seeing. Two shapes on either side of the doorframe, dark against the darker hallway. I blinked a few times, trying to focus. Then it hit me. They were hands. Two human hands gripping the doorframe from the hallway, fingers wrapped tightly around the wood like someone was leaning forward just out of sight. My heart instantly started hammering. I couldn't see the person attached to them because they were standing just outside the doorway. For a split second, we were completely still, me frozen in bed, those hands perfectly motionless on the frame. I fumbled with my phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam shot across the room and landed directly on the doorframe. The moment the light hit them, the hands jerked away, disappearing instantly back into the hallway. I don't think I've ever felt panic like that before. I jumped out of bed and screamed, "Hey!" My voice echoed through the apartment. I ran to the doorway, expecting to see someone running down the hall or hiding in the living room, but when I looked out there, nothing. The hallway was empty, completely silent. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. I turned on all the lights in the apartment and searched everything. The bathroom, empty. The kitchen, empty. I yanked open every cabinet, every closet. I even checked behind the shower curtain like I was in some horror movie. No one was there. The front door was still locked from the inside. All the windows were closed. Eventually, the adrenaline faded and the alcohol haze came creeping back. I sat on the couch trying to make sense of it. The only explanation that made sense was that I'd imagined it. Maybe I'd been dreaming and woke up halfway through it. Maybe the vodka messed with my head. After a while, I convinced myself it had to be a hallucination. The next morning, sunlight filled the apartment and everything felt normal again. For a few minutes, I even laughed about the whole thing, thinking about how paranoid I must have been. But then I walked into the hallway outside my bedroom, and something made me stop. On the doorframe, right where I remembered those hands gripping the wood, were 2 sets of fingerprints pressed in the dust on the paint. Clear as day, 5 long streaks on each side, exactly where fingers would have been. My stomach dropped. I hadn't imagined anything. Someone had been standing outside my bedroom watching me while I slept. I never figured out who it was or how they got inside, but when my lease ended 6 months later, I packed everything I owned and moved out that same week. I've had a lot of apartments since then, but I still check my bedroom door every night before I go to sleep. When I was 16, my parents were almost never home. They both worked long hours. My mom was a nurse who did night shifts at the hospital, and my dad ran a small auto repair shop that stayed open late. Most weekdays, I came home from school to an empty house and stayed there alone until midnight or later. At first, it felt amazing. No one telling me to do homework right away, no one complaining if I ate junk food for dinner. I'd throw a frozen pizza in the oven, sit in the living room, and watch whatever I wanted on TV. Eventually, it became my routine. The quiet didn't bother me. If anything, I liked the independence. Our house wasn't huge, but it had this long hallway that ran from the living room to the bedrooms in the back. My room was the last door on the right. At night, the place always made little sounds, pipes ticking, wood creaking, the fridge humming in the kitchen. After living there my whole life, I knew all those noises. Nothing ever really surprised me. So one Friday night, when I was home alone again, everything felt completely normal. I had the TV on in the living room playing some late-night comedy reruns while I scrolled through my phone in my bedroom. Around 11:30 p.m., my phone rang. The screen lit up with 3 words, "No caller ID." I stared at it for a second. Calls like that were usually spam or prank calls. Still, I answered. "Hello?" I said. Nothing. No voice. Just silence. I waited a few seconds. "Hello?" I repeated, a little louder this time. That's when I noticed something strange. I could hear noise through the phone, very faint, like background sound. At first, I thought it was just static, but after listening closely, I realized it wasn't static at all. It sounded like a television. The weird part was the show that was playing. I could hear the exact same dialogue and laugh track that was coming from the TV downstairs in my living room. At first, I thought it was a coincidence. Maybe the caller just happened to be watching the same show somewhere else. But then a specific joke came on, and the characters on my TV laughed at the exact same second as the laughter I heard through the phone speaker, perfectly synced. My stomach dropped. There was no delay, no difference. The sound coming through the phone was the exact same sound from the TV in my house. That realization hit me all at once. Whoever was on the phone had to be inside my house. I sat there frozen on my bed, staring at the bedroom door. The hallway outside was dark. My brain tried to come up with some other explanation. Maybe the phone was picking up my TV through the microphone somehow. Maybe it was some weird feedback loop. But then another sound came through the phone, a soft shuffle, like someone shifting their weight on the floor. And that's when the call suddenly ended. For a few seconds, I just sat there holding my phone. My heart was beating faster now. I listened carefully. At first, the house was completely silent except for the TV downstairs.
Then I heard it, a slow, heavy footstep somewhere in the hallway. My chest tightened. Another step followed, then a third. Whoever it was walking slowly, deliberately, like they didn't want to make noise. I grabbed my phone again and turned the screen brightness all the way down. My bedroom door was closed, but the hallway light under the door frame was dark. Whoever was out there was moving in total darkness. Then came another sound, right outside my room. Someone clearing their throat. It was quiet, but unmistakably human. I stopped breathing entirely, afraid even the sound of air might give away that I was awake. A few seconds later, the doorknob slowly turned. The metal handle rattled as someone gently tried to open it. Thankfully, I had locked it earlier without even thinking about it. The knob twisted once, twice, then stopped. I could hear breathing on the other side of the door now. Slow, steady breathing. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. I quietly opened my contacts and called my uncle. He lived about 10 minutes away and was the closest family member nearby. When he answered, I whispered as quietly as I could, "Someone's in the house." At first, he thought I was joking, but when he heard how scared I sounded, his voice immediately changed. "Stay in your room, lock the door, and don't come out," he said. "I'm getting in the truck right now." While we were still on the phone, the doorknob outside stopped moving. The hallway went silent again. About 8 minutes later, I heard a truck engine outside and tires crunching on the gravel driveway. My uncle's voice came through the phone again. "I'm here." As soon as his headlights lit up the front windows, chaos broke out downstairs. I heard fast footsteps running through the living room, then the crash of something hitting the kitchen counter. My uncle burst through the front door seconds later, yelling. By the time he reached the kitchen, the back window above the sink was wide open. The intruder had climbed out and disappeared into the darkness behind the house. The police came and took a report. They dusted for prints and checked the area, but whoever it was had already gotten away. The creepiest part came later when they traced the phone call. The number that had called me belonged to someone I vaguely knew from school, a guy who had been in a few of my classes the year before. When police questioned him, he claimed his phone had been stolen earlier that night at a party. There was no way to prove whether he was telling the truth or lying. The case eventually went cold, and nothing ever came of it. But even now, years later, I still remember the exact moment I realized the TV sound on the phone matched the TV in my house, and how that meant the person calling me wasn't far away at all. He was already inside. This happened a few years ago when I was in my early 20s, back when weekends usually meant cheap drinks and staying out way too late with friends. One Friday night, a group of us met at a small bar downtown. It wasn't anything fancy, sticky floors, loud music, and neon beer signs glowing on the walls, but it was our regular spot. My friend Cody was there, along with a few other people we'd known since high school. We spent most of the night laughing, telling stupid stories, and ordering round after round of drinks we probably couldn't afford. By the time the bartender announced last call, everyone was pretty drunk. Cody lived only about 10 minutes away, so instead of calling rides home, we all piled into a couple cars and headed to his place to keep hanging out. His house was a typical 2-story suburban place with a finished basement where we usually spent time playing video games or watching movies. Cody's parents were home that night but already asleep upstairs, so we tried to keep things somewhat quiet, though when a bunch of drunk people say they'll be quiet, that rarely lasts long. Someone put music on through a speaker, someone else found leftover pizza in the fridge, and we ended up sitting around the basement talking for another hour. Eventually, people started getting tired. One by one, they either left or passed out on couches and chairs. I remember sitting on the basement couch feeling that heavy, sleepy buzz that comes after a long night of drinking. Cody tossed me a blanket and said, "Just crash down here if you want." I nodded and stretched out across the couch. The basement lights were dim, and the room had that cool, quiet feeling basements usually have late at night. The last thing I remember before falling asleep was hearing the faint hum of the refrigerator upstairs through the floor. At some point in the middle of the night, I woke up. My throat felt dry, the kind of dry that only happens after drinking too much. For a few seconds, I didn't even remember where I was. The basement was dark, except for a faint glow coming from the small window near the ceiling. My head felt heavy and foggy as I slowly sat up on the couch. The room was mostly silent. Somewhere upstairs, a floorboard creaked, probably someone turning over in their sleep. That's when I noticed something in the corner of the basement. At first, it didn't seem unusual, just a dark shape standing near the wall across the room. My brain immediately tried to label it as something normal, maybe a coat rack or one of those tall standing lamps. Cody had random furniture scattered around the basement, so it wouldn't have been strange. I blinked a few times, trying to clear the blur from my eyes. The shape didn't move. It just stood there in the darkness. For a moment, I almost ignored it completely. I swung my legs off the couch and rubbed my face, still half asleep. But then something about the shape started to bother me. It didn't quite match the outline of furniture. It looked uneven, like shoulders, like a head. I stared at it for a few seconds longer, trying to convince myself it was nothing. That's when the shape moved, just slightly, a shift in weight, the kind of movement a person makes when they've been standing still too long. The realization hit me instantly. That wasn't furniture. That was a person. Someone was standing in the corner of the basement, watching me. My heart started pounding so hard I could feel it in my chest. Every instinct in my body wanted to panic, but something in my brain told me not to react. If that person realized I knew they were there, I had no idea what they might do. So I forced myself to act normal. I stretched, pretended to yawn, and stood up from the couch like I had just woken up and was heading upstairs for water. The staircase to the main floor was on the other side of the basement. I started walking toward it slowly, trying not to look back at the corner. Every step felt painfully loud in the quiet room. When I reached the stairs, I put one foot on the first step and casually glanced over my shoulder. The shape in the corner was gone. My stomach dropped. I quickly turned back toward the stairs and climbed a few steps higher. Something made me look down again. At the bottom of the staircase, just a few feet away, the figure was now standing there in the darkness. I didn't think any more after that. Adrenaline took over. I ran up the rest of the stairs two at a time and burst into the hallway upstairs. "Cody!" I shouted, banging on his bedroom door. It flew open a second later and he stared at me, confused and half asleep. I told him someone was in the basement. Within seconds, his dad came out of the master bedroom holding a flashlight, asking what was going on. When we explained, he immediately headed toward the basement stairs, with Cody and I standing behind him. When we got downstairs, the basement was empty, completely silent. But two things were immediately wrong. The basement door that led to the backyard was wide open, and the back gate outside was swinging slightly in the night breeze. Whoever had been down there had escaped. The police came and searched the area, but never found anyone. No one could explain how the person got in or how long they had been there. After that night, I never slept in Cody's basement again. Even now, years later, I still remember that moment, sitting up on that couch and realizing the black shape in the corner wasn't a piece of furniture at all. It was someone standing in the dark, waiting.